Hey YouTube, SlingBlade98 here. After pouring about 100 hours into my 100 greatest singers of all time list as a project, I wanted to upload it to YouTube for you guys to give your opinions on. I read the Rolling Stones 100 greatest singers of all time list, and I felt as though they really got down on their knees and choked hard on it for mainstream music. They put so many people on there who were just big names and really didn't dive too deep into their talent, preferring just to talk meaninglessly about who they influenced. So out of anger and a desire to not just be another powerless bitching ranter on the comments board, I wanted to, bite the bullet and make my own list rather than just whining. I wanted to say, okay, I can do better, and I'm pretty sure I did, because this is a pretty damn well-rounded list, if I do say so myself. Basically put the whole last week of my life into this, and I researched so much and found so many great new people. So this is actually my opinion of the 100 greatest singers of all time, not just the only 100 singers of all time that I happen to know. I really found a lot of new people and spent an extensive amount of time researching their catalog to make sure they were worthy and to make sure I had a good understanding of them, to write you guys a deep analysis that went beyond just, sucking somebody off in your analysis of their music, if you know what I mean. So out of being disgruntled with the Rolling Stones list as a journalistic failure, I have brought you guys my own list in an effort to not just be another bitching moaner. Okay, or moaning bitcher, whichever you prefer. The choice is up to you. Okay, so I'm going to be reading off the computer screen here because this would be way too much information to memorize. I would be fucking up left and right more than the Bush administration during Hurricane Katrina. So if you guys don't like me reading off a screen, I'll try to read with feeling so I don't sound like John Laurinaitis, or John Laryngitis as some of you guys like to call him. But I'll try to read with feeling, but due to the sheer amount of information on this list, and this is going to be part one of a longer series, but due to the sheer amount of information on this list, I think it's a fair concession that you guys accept that I will be reading off a script here, and I'll try to interject with some of my own little improvised facts from memory. But these are pretty well written analyses that I've spent the last 3 days writing pretty much, and I've spent about 15 hours a day on them. I'm on summer break, so I've gotten no friends, no life, no school, and basically this has been my life for the last week. And I think that you guys will really like this because I put a bone-crushing amount of work into this. Okay, so this is in no particular order, so don't bitch about the rankings. Number 1 is as good as number 100. Okay, so number 1, Eva Cassidy. I would put Cassidy's voice up there with Joan Baez in terms of pure talent. Much like Baez, Cassidy's catalog was comprised largely of covers. Consequently, she gives some of the greatest songs of all time, like What a Wonderful World and Imagine, the gift of her beautiful voice. She died very young, but was discovered posthumously, which means after she died, and sold a large amount of records in the 1990s. She isn't easy to classify either, and covered songs of all styles, from Sting to the Beatles to gospel songs. You haven't lived until you've heard Eva Cassidy. Her voice is sweet enough to give you type 2 diabetes. She can pull off anything effortlessly, no matter how hard it was, and even does Etta James's At Last beautifully. I mean, she covered contemporary music, what was then contemporary music, 80s, 90s stuff, and she also did some popular songs from way back when, the 60s, the 70s, back into the 40s, even. She has a very broad range of stuff, and you guys will love her. She came up, actually, the way I found her was Joan Baez on Pandora, so you put in the best, sometimes you get back the best. I would put her up there with anyone. Number 2 on my list is Ella Fitzgerald. And by the way, if I get cut off on this list, I will just find my place. If I lose, the camera feed mid-sentence or something, I'll just resume where I was in the next video because my camera has a habit of dying spontaneously. So no sarcasm in the comments. Nice ending, jackass. I've gotten those before. So if it ends abruptly, I'll just keep going until that happens, and then I'll keep going where I left off, almost like a dissected series, because YouTube's time limits and my stupid camera battery life, because it's a actual camera, not a webcam. My limitations may be somewhat sparse, So let's go. Ella Fitzgerald is number 2 on my list. Ella Fitzgerald is the most technically gifted vocalist of all time and had the entire toolbox of talents at her effortless disposal. She had incredible vibrato, could hold notes for as long as she pleased, and released them with impeccable timing and great intonation. Her range was a full 3 octave range, which is about as rare as a sincere statement from a politician. Frankly, this woman is the yardstick by which all vocalists of every style should be judged. Her deep voice reverberates like the earth when God comes down from the realm of science fiction to bestow fake commandments on a bunch of delirious peasants who are starving in the desert. I couldn't tell you the name of a better jazz singer than this. I'd be hard-pressed to put anyone above her in terms of sheer incomparable skill and effortless ability. Coming in at number 3 on my list is Joan Baez, my favorite of all voices. She covered so many great Bob Dylan songs and did with them veritably what Jimi Hendrix did with All Along the Watchtower in terms of amelioration. I discovered Joan when watching the Newport Folk Festival in 1964 on television. Her live performance and her voice pierced my soul and left me desperately in search of more, like a heroin addict with empty pockets. Damned if I didn't find it when I looked. Her voice is haunting and beautiful. It is surreal and mind-bending. I find her voice to be like watching a starry sky reflected onto a lake in the dead of night. It has a rich, crisp texture to it. It is much like wind chimes in the evening. I am using imagery to give you a sense of what it's like to listen to, because it's frankly hard to describe sounds, and it's a hard experience to capture and to emulate without the real thing. So in an effort for you to have the real thing, I've came up with several songs, which I will do throughout this list when I find someone has a particularly deep catalog, for starting places, as I guess what you would call it if it was a segment. So check out It's All Over Now, Baby Blue, Diamonds and Rust, Cry Me a River, Farewell Angelina, Copper Kettle, Silver Dagger, or River in the Pines to start off. What a voice. She is to singing what Bob Dylan is to songwriting. And that's the biggest compliment I could give anyone for any topic. So number 4, Helen Forrest. I would call Helen Forrest the White Ella Fitzgerald. Although she had the same technical talents, they were to a slightly subordinated degree. I personally think, however, that she had a better tone of voice and just sounded gorgeous. She had a much more feminine voice, whereas Ella Fitzgerald was more of a bassy voice, almost baritone, but with a female sound to it. Her crooning and sultry, sexy singing is to men what Sinatra and Dean Martin are to women from that era. Many of her songs are on the topic of love, be it unrequited, wounded, or embraced. What better topic for a beautiful woman from the past to sing to you about? Check out Deep Purple by her and Artie Shaw here on YouTube. They did it together. Wow, that sounded dirty, but they performed it together. Okay, number 5 on my list, Ann Wilson from Heart. And this whole list is not just women, but I figured I would just reel off the best female singers I know. And these aren't necessarily the only women on the list, but the first couple are. And then number 8 is like Ozzie Osborn, so there's only a few more where it's just consecutive women, and there's tons of dudes too, for those of you who think I'm just, pandering to chicks. Okay, so number 5 is Ann Wilson from Heart. She is the best female rock voice in my opinion, and here's why. She brought such a diverse set of talents to the table vocally, and all of them would have been good enough standalone. When you put them together, however, you got a woman who is capable of being fiercely sexy, mysteriously enticing, gut-wrenchingly dramatic, and even relaxing, which is incredible compared to those other, moods that she was able to create with her voice. Respectively, I'd cite these songs as, examples of her creating those moods. Barracuda is an example of her being fiercely sexy. Magic Man is her being mysterious. Her 80s work is all pretty dramatic. And Dreamboat Annie is an example of her being relaxing. Those are all very distinct tone and moods that she was able to create with her voice, and I think that's pretty cool. Ann Wilson still sounds great to this day, furthermore, and has some of the best live shows of any veteran band still touring in their prime. I guess I should say Heart still, has the best concerts, but you know what I mean. Okay, so number 6, Bessie Smith, a black jazz singer from the 20s, and to succeed as a black woman in the 20s and 30s is, quite a feat. There was so much racism and sexism, and she overcame it all, and her talent was the reason why. Bessie Smith has a voice so full, thundering and powerful that it could cause earthquakes. I mean, this voice is a blues stampede right through a meadow where Vivaldi's Four Seasons is playing from the sky. It's still slow and classy, though. I think Smith was born to be an opera singer, but instead suited up to sing the blues, and damned if she didn't do a good job. By the way, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, for those of you who don't know but might recognize the melody, the da 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 da, you know that one that you always see in like montages in movies like Bambi or something. It's always usually played in like a grassy meadow or something. So that's why I used that juxtaposition there. So coming in at number 7 on my list is Billie Holiday. With less pure technical ability and natural range than several of her contemporaries, the resilient and inspiring Billie Holiday trudged through a tough life where she was raped and developed substance abuse problems to forge a place among the all-time greats. She was savvy and had a great musical ear that more than compensated for her lack of musical training. Her voice is thin but beautiful, like smoke rings drifting through a dimly lit pub. Although she was marketed as jazz, she was really a better blues musician. You have to respect how much she did with so many obstacles facing her in her personal life, and again, being a black woman in that era, racism and sexism to overcome, and that is quite a feat, and I really tip my hat, and I'll put on my hat actually just to tip it to Billie Holiday. And this is actually Giants crazy hair I picked up at a baseball game, which I'll highlight in another video for some stupid reason. But I tip my hat to her. She's just a beautiful human being, and she overcame so much, and I sympathize with her. Coming in at number 8, Ozzie Osborn. One of the most unique artists of all time and the heavy metal vocalist who set the bar for all hard rock frontmen to follow. His vocals on Paranoid are skillful and really capture the sense of mania that the lyrics denote. I think Ozzy isn't the best pure singer, but he fits his music style like a 44 caliber bullet in a 357 Magnum chamber. His sinister aura radiates through the microphone on songs like Megalomania, National Acrobat, Electric Funeral, and obviously their biggest song, Iron Man. He was really, I think he was kind of like Alice Cooper in a way. Shock rock, biting the head off bats live and stuff. We all know about Ozzy's antics, but let's not forget what a great singer he was and how well his voice fit their dark music. Okay, coming in at number 9, Gracie Slick from Jefferson Airplane. The gorgeous lead singer of Jefferson Airplane had piercing steel-colored eyes and a voice that took you into another dimension. Jefferson Airplane is most well remembered for White Rabbit and Somebody to Love, the former of which is the best acid rock song I have ever heard by miles due to Gracie's commanding vocals that echo through your psyche like the voice of God. She also put in Hall of Fame caliber vocals on Wooden Ships, High Flying Bird, and all of her other albums actually are pretty fucking awesome. Check out Jefferson Airplane if you pass them over or if you're too young to know who they are. She also kicked ass live and performed at some of the biggest shows ever, Woodstock and the Monterey Pop Festival 1967. I have the taste in music of a 58-year-old man, pretty much. Okay, coming in at number 10 on my list are actually two bandmates who kind of shared vocal duties, and one is almost more of an honorable mention. Stevie Nicks and Christy McVie of Fleetwood Mac. Stevie Nicks did the majority of Fleetwood Mac's singing and did beautifully on all of their hits, especially Dreams and Landslide. Her voice is slightly nasally, and the most similar singer I could compare her to, since sounds can be hard to describe, is Cyndi Lauper. I had to mention Christy McVie simply because of her stunning, awe-inspiring, mind-numbing, gut-wrenching vocals on Songbird, which is in contention with, probably along with Imagine and What a Wonderful World and Stairway to Heaven. It's up there with those and Freebird, probably in a race for the best song of all time. Now let me check my camera to see how much longer I have to be on camera for you guys, which is a weird thing to do, but I don't have a very technical setup here. I have to do everything manually, so uno momento, por favor. Okay, so I've got 3 more minutes here. Okay. Alright, so let's return to the list. Number 11, Janis Joplin. Janis was one of the first women with a deeper, coarser, more soulful voice to succeed in popular music. It had worked with Louis Armstrong to brilliant effect, and she is much like a white female equivalent of the aforementioned artist. Her voice is like a hissing teapot, and is a welcome departure from the cookie-cutter mold of what the music industry tells women they're supposed to sound like. Her voice is like throwing glass into a blender and somehow getting rock candy out. It's still just delicious, if you know what I mean. You could devour her songs. They're so rich and wonderful, you can just bite into them. And my God, that is cheesy. Okay. In part 2, I'll try to come up with some better metaphors. That just sucked cock. Okay, coming in at number 12 on my list is Aaron Lewis from Staind. One of the more underrated singers of the last 3 generations, Aaron Lewis has one of the most versatile and powerful sets of vocal cords in all of alternative rock. His singing on the song So Far Away is awe-inspiring and seems to come from another world into your headphones on bird's wings. It resonates in a very unique way and doesn't oscillate like most voices when sustaining a long note. Staind is one of the best bands of the last 20 years in my book, and I would put them in the top 100 artists of all time. Lewis's singing is the reason why. Over the common arena rock power chords and dynamic drumming, his voice really steals the show. Check out his cover of Nutshell by Alice in Chains, and check out Stain's earlier work, as it is their best stuff, particularly the album 13 Shades of Grey. They did probably the best cover of Comfortably Numb, outside of Pink Floyd, obviously, that I think I've heard any other artist perform, obviously besides the originals. I think theirs is the second best version of it. They do an acoustic version with an electric solo, and it's pretty damn righteous. Coming in at number 13, I'm probably going to get cut off on this one, is Ronnie Van Zandt, the original vocalist of Southern rock immortals Lynyrd Skynyrd. Van Zandt is a great natural talent. He sounded as good live as he did in the studio and was able to sing the full range of human emotions, from introspective melancholy on songs like Tuesday's Gone and Freebird to a carefree I Want to Party type attitude, and songs like Give Me Three-Step Mister and Don't Ask Me No Questions and I Won't Tell You No Lies. A lot of singers sound like their voices have been injected with Botox because they can't sing differently when they are changing moods between songs. Ronnie could sing straightforward, unemotional drinking music or perform a ballad like Freebird, and that takes the full range of anybody's talents to accomplish. His voice is a unique presence in a genre dominated by great vocals, the country/southern rock genre. It's largely vocals driven.